Thank you, Madam President. It's refreshing that I can smile, before my presentation. I think it's reflective of the spirit within which we debate in this honorable house, in the upper house, and I think it is healthy and constructive. So first, let me begin by thanking my colleague for a very interesting presentation that I think also provoked the thoughts and our discussion. Madam President, to add my voice to the motion, I want to start by taking a cue, so to speak, from some of the statements made by the leader of government business. When in discussing or in speaking on the motion, made it clear that the government had confidence in SLASPO. It is very encouraging to hear today that this government is telling us that it has confidence in SLASPO or any local organization to handle its business. And I will explain why I'm saying that. This is something I have spoken about almost every time I stand in this honorable house. And I've been very consistent with that issue because I truly believe that any government should always demonstrate full confidence in its citizens and its organizations to run its affairs unless they are incapable or unless the task to be undertaken cannot be undertaken, the capacity is not there, and therefore we can seek assistance from outside. In fact, when I last spoke during the budget debate, I made that point, and I made that point in the context of the discussion about engaging foreign assistance and foreign firms to do government business. And so I agree with the leader of government business that the government should demonstrate confidence in our local organizations and our local human resource. But we must be consistent, Madam President. That is where I depart. There needs to be some level of consistency in that approach. Because when we insist that SLASPO has the capacity to handle the magnitude of that loan and the project, we must also ask, where is the confidence of the government when it comes to our public servants who could have handled our budgets and who could have done so many of these things that the government had paid to do? For example, the budget that was prepared by, was it Ernst & Young? Madam President, where is the consistency when the government does not demonstrate the confidence in the NSDC and instead engages a private company, was it CHTTI? Now we don't hear about them. Where is that consistency, Madam President? When the government discards local boards, and I don't want to go too much in detail, where is the confidence in the National Trust? What about Kent Crafton, our world-renowned curator, Sports Saint Lucia Inc.? Where is the confidence in people like him when we were engaging the Packer Company to do our sports program? Madam President, I just wanted to begin on that note, that if we speak of confidence in SLASPO, I have no difficulty with that. We need to have confidence in other government entities, other local entities that can provide the quality service that is required. And let us not conveniently refer to it when it suits our cause. Now, Madam President, having listened to Senator Jean-Pierre, my colleague, I must say that he made some very important notes and points, which I sat and nodded in approval of. And it's not because he's on the opposite side of the House that I think I should disagree with anything he says. But I just want to perhaps provide a little bit of clarification regarding the issue of the head tax that he referred to. I understand from what he said that the head tax had been discontinued when the Labour Party was in government. But I think he fell short of explaining why it was done, and I think it's important that we be fair and see why. It was at the time not legal, and it was declared by the former Prime Minister, to do so before the commencement of the works had started at the airport. And I think, to put it in context, it would have been fair for that to have been said as well. I also noted, interestingly, that he referred to the issue of people waiting in line while aircrafts, people could not disembark from the aircrafts, which would be a major inconvenience. I don't think we can argue that. That is important, and I think that if we can do anything to make our passengers comfortable, that's fine. But I also believe that it is equally important to pay attention to these people who are standing in line and have to come to Victoria Hospital in the morning, early morning, and stay for hours just to get service. I think it is even more important. And these are St. Lucians. So while I have no difficulty in making our visitors comfortable, every St. Lucian should be proud of anything that can be done to encourage visitor arrivals. But we must also pay attention to the things that are important to our own citizens. So there's no reason why we should come to this house to justify the comfort of visitors while we ignore the basic needs and services that should be provided for our St. Lucians, particularly in areas like healthcare and education. And when the point was made about people getting wet, I didn't, on the way in by my previous colleague, I just chuckled, because at that point I thought, but we have students getting wet in schools, students getting wet in their classrooms, Madam President, in schools in St. Lucia. Is the government concerned about these students? So I have no difficulty in any development in an airport or any organization that is going to be geared towards improving visitor arrivals, comfort, or numbers. I would encourage that and support that. But I'm saying, and that is where the argument must not be mixed up with this triple F and so on, we must pay attention to the things that are essential for our citizens. Take care of these things. And then you can come to this house and talk about making others comfortable. So until you do that, I will not be prepared to accept the argument, because you're not consistent. Madam President, going back to the motion, I have heard the government, representatives of the government, come to this honorable house in the past and made reference to a lockbox, that the monies that are going to be collected from the taxes collected at the airport will be going into a lockbox. Madam President, because the lockbox has been mentioned so often, I am yet to hear, and it has been asked before by the opposition, what is the amount of money that has been collected and how much money is in this lockbox? And I think the government has a responsibility to this Parliament and to the citizens of St. Lucia to declare, if you say you're collecting money from St. Lucians included, because the monies, the taxes collected at the airport are not being paid by the tourists alone, Madam President. St. Lucians travel too. We have local and regional tourism. Locals travel and they also pay departure tax. They also pay those taxes. So if people, the government is collecting revenue via taxes, and it is being, we are told that it's been put in a lockbox, but to date, no one is telling the country what is the state of that lockbox. I think we need to ask that question. And that is making St. Lucians, and definitely the opposition, very suspicious of that lockbox issue. Tell us how much is in the lockbox. It's our money. And also, Madam President, since there is no disclosure, I am wondering whether that lockbox is locked at all. Is it locked? Because the concept of a lockbox is that the money is designated for a specific purpose and that purpose only. So right now I have to question, well, is that lockbox locked? Madam President, I don't know, the padlock must have been lost. Madam President, airport redevelopment is a major undertaking. And I will not venture into too much into the area of the public-private partnership. I think it has been ventilated in this house for quite a while. But I want to ask about the plan. If you are going to take up a project of that magnitude, and it has been established in this house with no dispute that this is the largest single infrastructural project undertaken by any government in this country, in the history of this country. So this is a major undertaking. Madam President, how could you have gone into to the point where you are borrowing money. You are coming to this honorable house to get approval to borrow $200+ million for that project. And to date, we have not seen or heard of a master plan. We do not know the total cost of the project, because if you're borrowing a certain quantity, it's based on your projections, so you borrow X amount now, and you're going to come back to borrow. And people know the project cost $5, so I'm starting off, and I'm borrowing $2, and I will come back for the next 2, and so on. We do not know the total cost of the project up to now. And I'm not going into all the technicalities. I'm not an engineer. And we have members of this honorable house, at least 1 or 2, who have experience in those areas. But they have not asked the question. What is the total cost of this huge project that we're borrowing money for? Where is the plan? Madam President, my layman's knowledge of projects, don't you need a plan for you to know the cost of a project? How do you determine the cost? Don't you have to have a plan? So if you don't have a plan to declare, how do I know what the project costs? And how do I know that you need to begin with $205 million at this time, or $200 million? I do not know. This is not a petty little, a petty bit of work that you're just undertaking. This is a major infrastructural project that my children and St. Lucians will have to be paying for a very long time. So my issue is that the government needs to be a lot more forthcoming with information that is vital about this project. The plan for the project, I have not heard it being discussed. I have not seen it being brought to this house. I have not seen it ventilated anywhere. The cost of the project. It's a basic principle of undertaking projects. That has not been done. So, Madam President, I move to one other very critical area, and that is the procurement process. Of course, it appears from all accounts, and it has been mentioned here, that there is no tendering, no competitive bidding for this project of that size. Why don't you think St. Lucians will have suspicions about what you are doing if that amount of money is being invested in something and we don't even know, how that whoever is going to get the contract is going to get it, or the contracts will be subdivided? We don't know. And if there's no competitive bidding and it's going to be done through direct award, I mean, Madam President, that is cause for suspicion. So we cannot blame St. Lucians or anyone who raises questions about that. And to date, even before the borrowing was done, from the time the project was announced, the opposition and St. Lucians have been asking about the procurement processes. Now we are here in this honorable house to approve borrowing, and we have not given answers to these questions. Madam President, I am very concerned for these reasons. Madam President, I think that there is too much cloud surrounding this. There is too much cloudiness, just for want of a better word. And unless these clouds are blown away by this government to clear up the questions that we are asking, we will remain very suspicious of what is going on. Now, one of our colleagues mentioned that the PPP issue is not necessarily the correct approach. And I think it has been discussed. But, Madam President, again, we go back to inconsistency. If the government is so much for local undertaking and not think that we should lease our airports to anybody for any amount of time because the revenue should be collected by us, and this PPP thing we're talking about is not the best approach. Madam President, I don't think this government is consistent again, because isn't there some kind of arrangement for the OKEU hospital that involves some form of a private-public partnership? But the only difference I see in that regard is the government has no problem with it because the beneficiaries will be doing so for private interest. So if you have an issue with the airport PPP, why don't you have an issue with the arrangement with the airport, with the hospital? Now, Madam President, again, if a government has a policy position on what it does, it has a certain way of operating that can explain, It may not be the same as a previous government. I am not here to say that anything this government does must be done according to what the previous government did. That is okay. You can differ in philosophy and approach to management. But there are certain principles that must be kept. You need to be transparent. And if you believe in doing something a certain way and you can justify it, then go ahead and justify it. But don't justify it when it suits you for one purpose or one project. And when it comes to something else, it is not okay to do it. That doesn't make sense to me, Madam President. And so it raises a lot of suspicion in my mind and in the minds of many St. Lucians who are very interested, not to say we do not want an airport. There are lots of St. Lucians who cannot wait for these kinds of developments. There are many of us who want our airport to be redeveloped. But it doesn't mean we should redevelop the airport at any cost to St. Lucians and their welfare. We must be responsible and prudent in this kind of management. And this is why I think a lot of these questions are being raised. Now, Madam President, I'm going to be very brief. So let me wrap up here. We believe that the airport development is necessary. We believe that. But there are other factors that come into play when you are going to develop, especially an international airport. And I think development cannot be undertaken in a vacuum. I think anyone with good sense will agree. You can't develop without putting it into context. So if you're going to develop your international airport, Hewanorra International Airport, in the south, there are certain other services that you expect to be of a certain quality. Because if you redevelop the airport, whether you decide to use PPP or you develop based on the current model that the government is proposing, let us assume that the government goes back to the table and they fix all the issues that I have asked about. They put it to public tendering, they clean up all the clouds that I'm speaking about, and they say, okay, now we have justified that we can borrow the money. I still have a problem, Madam President. And the problem I have is that some of the support services that are essential for operating an airport that you have developed, that means you're going to have increased passenger arrivals, you're going to have a need for increased services. One of those essential services is health services. Just a few meters away from that new airport that the government finds it so important to develop. They can't wait to go and do it. Everybody, that has become #1 priority in this country, all of a sudden, the development of the airport. But a few yards away from that same airport, St. Lucians are languishing in a health facility. And I'm not speaking this time about, oh, you all didn't finish it. I know that's coming. You didn't finish it in 5 years. I am saying, when you have developed an airport, or if you have plans to improve your airport so that your visitor arrivals obviously are going to improve, what have you put in place regarding your essential health services? God forbid something goes wrong, that is supposed to support the services of that newly developed airport. Are you going to tell me that your visitors that you don't want to get wet in the rain can go to the George Odlum Stadium and access the quality of health services that we have there, that our locals are now dealing with? So you care about them not getting wet. Do you care about the kind of health service that they are offered? Again, Madam President, inconsistency. And I'm not suggesting that the hospital should have been finished before, of course. But I'm saying we must be consistent, and we're talking about things in a vacuum here. So what are the other services that complement development of an airport in the south of the country, an international airport, that this government has shown to be a priority? They spoke about 5 years, 5 years. It is 3 years. It is 3 years. And we're talking about priority for an airport development, but the support service, one of the most essential ones, which is a hospital of a certain standard, has not been given any kind of serious consideration. We just hear lots of different announcements about plans and this and that happening. I believe that the Minister of Health is better placed to give feedback on that. But what is key, Madam President, is that this support service, in terms of a proper health facility within reasonable proximity of that airport, is nowhere. So why are we talking about the airport development as if it is the only thing? It is the most important priority area for this government to undertake. Madam President, I believe that there are many other essential services and essential needs that the country has that need to be given that kind of attention. $205 billion to be borrowed in one sitting. You cannot come to this house and convince me that this is the most important investment that you need to make in St. Lucia at this time. There are too many other things that are happening here. I don't have a problem with the airport. Let's do it. Fine. But let it be part of a more comprehensive plan. And justify that. I have no difficulty with it. I will never stand in this honorable house and be against development of any airport or any important infrastructural project. But do not come to the honorable house and behave as if that is the only and most important priority area or most important issue that has to be addressed. Let it be part of something that is more comprehensive.
Amen.
I was even thinking that the government would have tried to justify it along with the DSH issue, but the DSH has become such a monster now that nobody's talking about it. So now it's airports. You know, 1 year ago, Madam President, DSH, horses, and all of that. Now, everybody has seen, you know, the empire is naked.
Yeah.
So everybody has seen what it is that's going on with DSH. So DSH is not such a catchy concept anymore. So now it's airport redevelopment. Airport redevelopment. As if that is all we need. I don't even want to go into crime and so on, Madam President. There are so many issues, and we have 2 ministers sitting in this honorable house. And the areas that they are responsible for are critical areas. Well, at least 2, I know. And I mean, they are responsible for critical areas. I am not suggesting that we just go and go and try to fix all problems one time, but there must be some kind of coherence in terms of the developments that we want, especially when we are coming to borrow that kind of money in one city. So, Madam President, it is within that context that I have a lot of difficulty, very grave difficulty with supporting this motion as it is presented. I will re-emphasize that this opposition does not have any issue with development, airport development, or any kind of development.
Yeah.
We will support development when it is done within a context of transparency, and when there is proper accountability for the monies that you want to borrow to do so, and that we can see that it is part of a bigger comprehensive plan to develop our people and our country. But don't come to this house and expect me to support any motion to borrow all that money. And sometimes we know how to make money look like it's not an issue. 200 million is no money. Really?
They work it out.
You know how much 200 million can do? For schools, for healthcare, for social services, for the justice system in St. Lucia, you know?
For young people.
But no, we make it seem as if it's trivial. So when that can be done, when this kind of justification can be provided, I will have no difficulty. I will have no difficulty with even saying, when you ask, the ayes, I will say the ayes have it. I'll say, aye, Madam President. When this is done.
I said, ouch.
Right now, I really cannot.
Yeah.
And so, on that basis, Madam President, I am unable to support this motion as it is presented, given the terms, given the conditions, and given the context within which it is presented to this Honorable House. I thank you, Madam President.